Look at me. How am I supposed to go to the airport like this? The doctor just came and told me to take a shower to clean myself up before I leave. Those were the words spoken by a young Brazilian woman in December 2017. Her face was swollen, covered in bruises. Her voice trembled with genuine fear as she recorded herself on her phone. She wasn't exaggerating. She wasn't seeking attention. She was terrified, and she said it with every ounce of strength she had left. In that recording, the woman made it clear that her ex-partner was forcing her to return to Brazil and that she feared for her life. Weeks later, her body was found in Mexico. This video wasn't just another message, it was a warning. And still, no one managed to stop what came next. Her name was Marina Oliveira Santos. Born in 1993 in the outskirts of Recife, Brazil, she grew up in one of the most vulnerable neighborhoods of the city. The area was marked by poverty, unpaved streets, and limited opportunities. Violence was part of daily life, and many young people there grew up surrounded by illegal activities and few chances of escape. Marina was the youngest of 4 siblings. She lived with her mother, Conceição Santos, in a modest house with unfinished walls and a sandy yard. She never knew her father. From an early age, she was noticed for her appearance. She had light brown skin, striking green eyes, and a natural beauty that made her stand out. Neighbors and classmates started calling her Jade because of those eyes. During childhood, Marina attended school, though she showed little interest in studying. She lived a life similar to other kids in her neighborhood, spending time with friends, dressing simply, wearing little makeup. At that point, her lifestyle was quiet and unremarkable beyond her physical appearance. Around age 13, Marina's routine began to shift. She met Camila Reis, a young woman 5 years older. Camila came from a broken home. Her mother worked long hours, leaving her unsupervised most of the time. In the neighborhood, people said Camila lived dangerously, constantly involved with the wrong crowd. Some even said she lived in jail without being locked up, a local expression describing her constant proximity to criminal activity. Because of the age difference and the lack of boundaries at home, Marina began to see Camila as a role model and followed her every step. Under that influence and without strict family supervision, Marina started going out at night while still very young. At just 14, she began attending parties and nightclubs, where she was exposed to drugs for the first time and placed in risky situations she wasn't prepared to handle. These experiences marked a definitive break in her lifestyle. Marina started making increasingly dangerous decisions, entering a dark world that proved nearly impossible to escape. Through Camila, she began associating with people linked to criminal networks. According to various accounts, Camila was involved with a gang leader who controlled one of Recife's most notorious detention centers. This prison operated under a command structure where certain inmates held absolute control both inside and outside the facility. These leaders didn't just dominate life inside the prison, but also coordinated illegal activities on the outside, including extortion, weapons trafficking, and drug dealing. They enjoyed economic privileges, organized parties inside the compound, and received frequent visits from women. In that environment, Marina became familiar with a criminal dynamic that would eventually become part of her everyday life. On Christmas Eve 2011, when Marina was 18, she was taken from a nightclub by a group of men and brought to the detention center. According to available information, she was delivered as a Christmas gift to one of the facility's leaders. His name was Rafael da Silva, known as Furacão. He was 23 years old with an extensive criminal record including robbery, extortion, weapons possession, and murder of police officers. Despite knowing his background, Marina showed no resistance. From the moment she met him, she felt attracted and began a romantic relationship. From that point on, Marina's life took a definitive turn. Rafael started providing her with designer clothes, shoes, and constant access to parties. She entered and exited the prison whenever he requested, integrating that dynamic into her routine. Marina decided to stay by his side and adopted an increasingly fast-paced lifestyle centered on constant entertainment. Parties, alcohol, dancing, and excess became central to her existence, and her presence began to stand out everywhere she went. According to one of her closest childhood friends, Marina feared nothing and was willing to do whatever it took to achieve her goals. She showed no concern for the future and had clear aspirations: to travel, wear fashionable clothes, and become a model. Goals she felt were possible thanks to her relationship with Raphael, who indulged her every wish. Despite the material stability her relationship offered, Marina was aware she wasn't the only woman in Raphael's life. Over time, that reality began to weigh on her, and she decided to try her luck outside Brazil. It's unclear exactly when or how she made the decision, but according to her friends, it all started after meeting a woman during a night out at a club in Recife. This woman suggested she could use her physical attributes as a way to get what she wanted. Following that advice, Marina dyed her hair platinum blonde and, with the idea of achieving what she considered a better life, set off for Mexico. Upon arriving in Mexico City, Marina was received by a group of women known as Las Bonecas. With them, she began learning a dynamic that would soon become routine in her life: exchanging sexual services for cosmetic surgeries. Her social media accounts documented the progressive transformation of her body and the lifestyle she was leading at that time. From then on, Marina began traveling frequently between Mexico and Brazil. During those trips, she took the opportunity to visit her family while continuing her romantic relationship with Raphael. That phase came to an end on April 8, 2014, when Rafael da Silva died during a confrontation with police officers. Marina didn't arrive in time for his burial. However, when she finally returned to Brazil, she decided to pay him tribute. She ordered a flower arrangement with the letter R and went to the cemetery, where she played pagode music as part of a farewell ritual. Raphael's death marked an emotional breaking point in Marina's life. In August 2015, another blow shook her world. Camila, her inseparable friend and the person who had been key during her adolescence, was murdered. According to the police version, it was a crime motivated by jealousy. Just as with Raphael's death, Marina wasn't in Brazil when the homicide occurred. By that time, she was already known in Mexico as the most expensive doll in the showcase, a nickname referring to the high cost of her services. After these events, Marina consolidated her life in Mexico, definitively abandoned the dream of becoming a model, and began her routine as a sex worker through the website Elite Mexico. Comchewur. This site operated as a human trafficking network for sexual exploitation purposes, and its client portfolio included men from various backgrounds, from athletes to small-scale drug dealers. The platform was linked to Cartel del Centro, a criminal organization dedicated to illegal activities such as robbery, extortion, and kidnapping. Marina transformed her physical image, changed her hair to a very light blonde, and began traveling constantly within Mexico, moving through different regions of the country to serve her clients. By late 2015, she became the main image of the platform, and the cost of her services increased considerably. According to media reports, on one occasion she was hired as a companion for a Major League Baseball player from the United States. Despite the client requesting discretion, she posted images on her social media from a training facility wearing a jersey of pitcher Clayton Kershaw of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Although the woman lived in an apartment with a privileged view of Mexico City and was surrounded by luxury, she never disconnected from her family. She stayed in touch with her mother, sent her money, and dreamed of buying her a house outside the neighborhood where she grew up. While her mother described her as a good daughter, people close to the family assured that Conceição suffered deeply over the life Marina was leading. In 2017, through the same platform where she worked, Marina met Diego Hernandez Morales, born July 15, 1992, in Mexico City. He lived in Tepido, a popular neighborhood where informal commerce coexists with illegal activities such as smuggling, piracy sales, and drug dealing. Diego was the nephew of two of Mexico City's most notorious criminals. One was Armando Cruz Vega, known as El Tanque, leader of the gang Los Guerreros. The other was Luis Hernandez Soto, nicknamed El Coyote, a member of Cartel del Centro, who died after being attacked by two men on a motorcycle. After his uncle's death, Diego inherited the alias and became known as El Coyote. Within Cartel del Centro, Diego occupied the third position in the chain of command, only below Roberto Salinas Ortiz, alias El Gordo, and Fernando Ruiz Castillo, known as El Sombra. By the time he began his relationship with Marina, Diego already had at least 3 open investigations against him. All were related to attacks motivated by jealousy and violent behavior toward people in his close circle. In 2013, the first formally recorded incidents of violence attributed to Diego began to surface. In May of that year, a woman named Patricia, Diego's ex-partner and mother of his daughter, was threatened with a firearm when she attempted to file a lawsuit to obtain custody of the child. Months later, in January 2014, Patricia's new boyfriend was beaten outside his workplace and intimidated with a gun. These events were documented in investigations by the prosecutor's office and reinforced the pattern of jealousy-driven violence. A year and a half later, in September 2015, a neighbor of Diego's, identified as Carlos, was shot multiple times. According to the police file, Diego accused him of making advances toward his partner and demanded he leave the area. This attack consolidated his reputation as one of the most violent members of Cartel del Centro. Within the organization, Diego was considered one of the most aggressive drug dealers and extortionists. He was attributed with responsibility for human trafficking of women and contract killings. When Marina began a relationship with Diego, she once again became sentimentally involved with a man directly linked to the criminal world. Although in public they were seen sharing affectionately at restaurants and various entertainment venues in Mexico City, places Diego frequented with other members of the organization, the relationship was marked from the start by constant conflicts. In that context, the couple moved in together. Diego introduced Marina to his family, and both her mother and one of her brothers were aware of the relationship. Although it's impossible to pinpoint the exact moment when the abuse began, from the early stages the bond was marked by threats and episodes of control. Nothing Marina did was enough to calm Diego's jealousy. Despite having met through a platform where she offered sexual services, he demanded she abandon that activity. His insecurities began to condition Marina's life, creating an increasingly hostile and restrictive environment. Over time, Diego's threats escalated to constant physical aggression. In August 2017, Marina posted for the first time on her social media a photograph showing a wound on one of her arms. Close friends assured that Diego had cut her hair to prevent her from leaving the house, but she decided to get extensions and continue with her life. During that same period, Marina began appearing in images posing with weapons and drugs. She was forced by her partner to become involved in the delivery and distribution of small quantities of narcotics. These posts reflected the degree of control Diego exercised over her and the violent environment in which she found herself. Over time, Marina understood who Diego really was and began living in fear. She tried to distance herself from him and end the relationship in October 2017, but he wouldn't allow it. He abused her, harassed her, and forbade her from relating to other men. Additionally, he ordered her to return to Brazil, further intensifying the isolation and control over her life. 1 month later, in November 2017, Diego began a new romantic relationship, this time with a young Colombian woman who also worked on the same platform where Marina had worked. Her name was Valentina Ospina Reyes. Marina, who was 24 at the time, believed that with this new relationship the threats would cease, but exactly the opposite occurred. Diego continued monitoring her through his new partner, demanding she stay alert to everything Marina posted on social media. In conversations with friends, Marina expressed that Diego was out of control, that he harmed people for pleasure and not for money. She also mentioned she had heard him planning to extort Valentina, and that she herself warned her to be careful and trust no one. The relationship between Diego and Valentina lasted less than 2 months. Tragically, on January 3, 2018, Valentina's lifeless body was found in a hotel in Mexico City. The circumstances surrounding her death raised immediate suspicions, and Diego's name surfaced during preliminary investigations. However, no arrest was made at that time. Before that murder occurred, Diego had used a false name to hire Marina's services again through the platform. That day, he assaulted her brutally. He left her face swollen with bruises under her eyes, fractured her arm, struck her with a machete, and cut her hair. The attack was so severe that Marina required medical attention, though she was too terrified to go to a hospital. In December 2017, Marina became the victim of another assault by Diego. During that attack, he confessed to having killed other women and threatened to make her the next victim if she didn't return to Brazil. After each beating, Marina recorded different videos to document the injuries suffered and the threats received. In one of them, she begged Diego for time to leave the country. Her voice was broken, her face unrecognizable. The woman who once dreamed of being a model could barely look at herself in the mirror. In the videos, Marina appeared disheveled, with her hair covered in blood and multiple bruises on her face. One of the recordings was addressed to a friend, to whom she recounted in detail the physical and psychological abuse to which she had been subjected. In front of her phone camera, she made a direct plea to her ex-partner. She asked him for time to recover before returning to Brazil. Marina explained that due to a head wound, she needed 10 stitches, and assured him she would leave Mexico once the swelling on her face went down. She was clearly scared. Her hands trembled as she held the phone. Her breathing was irregular. This wasn't a performance. It was a woman facing death and trying to leave evidence behind in case the worst happened. After these assaults, she decided to hide. She deactivated her profile on the platform where she offered her services, withdrew from social media, and stopped posting the photographs she used to document her daily life. Apparently, she thought this would calm the situation and made the decision to remain in Mexico, at least temporarily. She stayed with a friend in a different neighborhood, avoided going out, and limited her communication to a small circle of trusted people. For nearly 2 months, Marina lived in a state of constant alert. She changed her appearance, stopped dyeing her hair, and tried to become invisible. During that time, she remained in contact with her mother through encrypted messaging apps. Conceição begged her to return to Brazil, but Marina feared that going to the airport would be the moment Diego would act. She felt trapped between two dangers, staying in Mexico or attempting to flee. Her friends tried to convince her to go to the police, but Marina knew Diego's connections made that option equally dangerous. In Mexico City's criminal underworld, filing a report against someone from Cartel del Centro could be a death sentence. Corrupt officers within the force often alerted the cartels about complaints. Marina had heard stories of women who had tried to escape similar situations and ended up dead anyway. The system that should have protected her was part of the same structure that kept men like Diego operating with impunity. Meanwhile, Diego continued his activities without any apparent consequence. He moved freely through Tepito, conducted his drug-dealing business, and even posted photos on social media showing off weapons and cash. To outside observers, he seemed untouchable. His connections, his family name, and the fear he inspired in the community created a protective shield around him. Marina knew all of this. That's why she stayed hidden, waiting for an opportunity to escape that might never come. The videos she recorded weren't just documentation of abuse. They were her insurance policy, her voice from beyond the grave if Diego succeeded in his threats. She sent copies to 3 different friends with clear instructions. If something happens to me, make these public. Finally, Friday, February 23rd, 2018 arrived. After nearly 2 months in hiding, Marina received an invitation from clients to attend an electronic music festival. The event was being promoted heavily across Mexico City, and several of her former colleagues from the platform would be there. Despite her fears, Marina felt suffocated by isolation. She convinced herself that in a crowded public space, surrounded by thousands of people, she would be safe. Before leaving, she notified her friends about her plans. She sent her location, the name of the venue, and the time she expected to arrive. They agreed to meet up later that evening. Marina got ready carefully, choosing an outfit that would help her blend into the crowd. She took a taxi instead of using a ride-sharing app, paid in cash, and asked the driver to drop her off 2 blocks from the actual destination. However, Marina never made it to the meeting with her friends. As hours passed without news from her, those close to her began to worry. They tried calling her phone repeatedly. The calls went straight to voicemail. They sent messages that were never read. By the next morning, her friends organized search efforts and contacted the authorities. That's when they learned that police had discovered a woman's body in the municipality of Ecatepec, near an elementary school. The area is considered one of the main hotspots for femicide in Mexico, a place where women's bodies appear with disturbing frequency. The discovery was made by a janitor who arrived early Saturday morning to open the school. He noticed something covered with a tarp behind the building and immediately called the police. What officers found shocked even the most experienced investigators. The body showed signs of extreme violence. The victim had a plastic bag placed over her head, secured with a zip tie around the neck to cause asphyxiation. She had been sexually assaulted, multiple blows, burns, and her face was disfigured with acid. Additionally, her eyes had been extracted. The brutality of the crime indicated this wasn't just murder. It was a message, a demonstration of power and cruelty meant to instill terror. Marina's friends went to the morgue. The identification process was traumatic. They recognized her body by physical characteristics and tattoos. A small hummingbird on her left shoulder, a phrase in Portuguese on her ribs that read Deus é fiel, meaning God is faithful. The green eyes that had given her the nickname Jade were gone, but the eye color was documented in her identification records. Although they informed police she had worked as a model, her image appeared linked to a website under investigation for alleged illegal practices and human trafficking. This led authorities to connect the case with other murders of women associated with the same platform. Between 2017 and 2018, at least 7 women who offered services through Elite Mexico.com had been found dead in different hotels and locations throughout Mexico City. The pattern was disturbingly similar. All were foreign women, most from South American countries. All had been subjected to extreme violence before death. All had some connection to the same criminal networks operating in the capital. Marina's murder wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a systematic pattern of violence against vulnerable women trapped in exploitation networks. The investigation moved slowly. Forensic evidence was collected, but processing took weeks. Witness statements were contradictory or suspiciously absent. People who might have seen something refused to talk, afraid of retaliation. The neighborhood where her body was found was controlled by criminal groups, and residents knew the price of cooperation with authorities could be death. 4 months after the murder, the videos Marina had recorded as evidence of the assaults she suffered came to public light. The release happened when one of her friends, unable to bear the weight of silence any longer, decided to share them with media outlets. The images were devastating. In those recordings, Marina directly pointed to Diego Hernandez Morales, alias El Coyote, as her abuser. In the videos, she spoke about the death threats she had received and also mentioned the possibility that he was responsible for Valentina Ospina's murder. The footage showed Marina with disheveled hair covered in blood, displaying multiple bruises on her face. The distribution of these videos through various media outlets provided new evidence for the police investigation. Marina's family also publicly identified Diego as responsible for the crime. They stated that the relationship between both had been violent and that authorities had known about the aggressor's behavior for a long time. Despite authorities knowing Diego's address and having detailed information about his identity, including photographs, data about his parents, and documents processed with local government, the man remained free for months. Even with an arrest warrant for Marina's murder, he continued receiving monthly financial support of 3,000 pesos from the Capital Economy Secretariat under the concept of aid to merchants. During that period, authorities carried out an intelligence operation to track his movements. The objective was to detain him without provoking unnecessary armed confrontation. After a year of surveillance on March 12, 2019, agents waited until Diego's bodyguards left him alone, then acted. He was detained in a quick intervention without gunfire inside a vehicle. At that moment, he was accompanied by a Venezuelan woman with a profile similar to other alleged victims. During his detention, Diego broke down crying and asked the officers not to beat him. According to law enforcement agents, the operation may have saved the life of the woman accompanying him, who requested to be turned over to immigration authorities to return to her country. Additionally, it was reported that Diego's capture not only represented a significant blow against one of Mexico City's most feared criminal groups, but also opened the possibility of clarifying at least 3 cases: Marina's murder, Valentina's murder, and that of another young Mexican woman named Laura Mendoza Cruz. After his detention, Diego was placed at the disposal of authorities. During investigations, it was reported that in one of the vehicles linked to the detainee, 100 bags of crystal meth were found. The man was interrogated by various officials, as he was considered a key piece in clarifying several crimes, including the murder of 12 people in the last 2 years. Despite multiple accusations linking him to violence in Mexico City, Diego only faced a sentence of 5 years in prison for the crime of distributing drugs in small quantities. Thus, on Saturday, November 26, 2022, after spending nearly 3 years confined in a detention center, the man was released. He served just over half his sentence because in the Mexican judicial system, small-scale drug dealing isn't considered a serious crime. At that time, the public prosecutor's office appealed the decision, as Diego had an open process for a more serious crime. However, the prosecution's lawyers failed to provide sufficient evidence linking him directly to the murders. His release didn't signify a change in behavior. After regaining freedom, Diego continued operating and committing the same crimes for which he was already known. Despite having regained freedom, the man remained under surveillance by authorities due to his history and role as a generator of violence. On Friday, October 20th, 2023, police were conducting patrols to locate a vehicle possibly related to a criminal event in which a member of a criminal gang was allegedly being transported. During that operation, officers approached a parked SUV to conduct a preventive inspection. Diego was detained again at that location. He was 31 years old. Accompanying him was a 29-year-old Venezuelan woman named Isabella Contreras Silva. She had arrived in Mexico like other young women to offer sexual services. Authorities noticed Isabella bore a striking physical resemblance to Marina and displayed similar behavior on social media, where she constantly shared her life of travel, designer clothes, and expensive jewelry. During the detention, agents confiscated a backpack containing various drugs, cash, and other illegal items. Both were transferred to the facilities of the Office of the Attorney General, where Diego was identified as a priority target due to his criminal history and role as a generator of violence. After the new detention, Diego was presented before a judge for his alleged responsibility in crimes against health. During the initial hearing, the public prosecutor's office formulated charges and requested he be linked to trial. However, the defense requested duplication of the constitutional term, so the hearing was postponed. Finally, on October 28th, past 11 at night, a judge in Mexico City ordered preventive detention against Diego Hernandez Morales, alias El Coyote. The measure was ordered for various crimes, including crimes against health, possession of firearms, kidnapping, extortion, homicide, and femicide. The judge determined that the accused should remain confined while it was resolved whether criminal proceedings would formally begin against him, due to the severity of the charges and the risk his possible freedom represented. Currently, Diego remains deprived of liberty. However, to this day, he hasn't faced a judicial process that definitively clarifies his responsibility in the events related to Marina. Despite the accusations, public evidence, and history of violence weighing against him, the case continues without a resolution that allows for speaking of justice. Years have passed, and Diego remains an extremely dangerous man. He isn't just an abuser, but a member of organized crime linked to drug dealing, extortion, and trafficking of women. His history of violence doesn't point to an isolated event, but to a repeated pattern suggesting Marina wasn't the only woman who passed through his hands. The evidence, testimonies, and related cases paint the profile of a predator who operated for years with total impunity. Most alarming is that despite all this, Diego continues without a firm conviction. He previously managed to leave prison easily, even when his name was linked to multiple violent acts. That precedent turns his current situation into a latent threat. A man with criminal connections, serious background, and possible additional victims who haven't yet been fully recognized by justice. As long as there's no definitive sentence, the message is clear and concerning. Impunity continues protecting those who represent a real danger to society. Marina documented her own story of abuse, left video evidence, but even so, justice couldn't or wouldn't protect her or adequately punish her killer.